CGTN, China Global Television Network.
UK police begin investigations after 39 bodies found inside truck in Essex. Tension continues between Ethiopia and Egypt over the Grand Renaissance Dam. And Botswana votes in a general election seen as the most critical in 50 years. Welcome, you are watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and for the latest in your business news, here is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The IMF is cautioning Nigeria against spending money on oil subsidies. And South Africa's ailing power utility Eskom gets yet another bailout out of South African taxpayers, this time worth some $4 billion. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thank you so much, Rama. Well, we'll begin in the UK, where police have launched a murder investigation into the 39 bodies found dead inside a lorry container. The truck was discovered at an industrial estate southeast of London, not far from docks of the River Thames. The driver of the truck has been arrested. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
In the early hours of Wednesday, British emergency services were alerted to people inside a truck container at this site, 32 kilometers east of London. But the victims were all pronounced dead at the scene.
We received reports that a number of people had been found inside a lorry's container at the Waterglade Industrial Park on Eastern Avenue in Grays. We believe the lorry is from Bulgaria and came into the UK through Holyhead on the 19th of October.
The Holyhead port in North Wales is a major entry point for traffic from Ireland. The police say a key line of inquiry is determining the route that the truck took from Bulgaria. The investigation has not yet confirmed whether the truck has Bulgarian registration.
And obviously the identification of the victims remains our number one priority, so that will be taking place.
But investigators are anticipating a lengthy process as victims' bodies carried no indication of their nationalities.
Early indications suggest that one of these people was a teenager, the rest are believed to be adults. A murder investigation was launched and the lorry driver, a 25-year-old man from Northern Ireland, was arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in police custody.
The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that he was appalled by the tragic incident.
This is an unimaginable tragedy and truly heartbreaking. I know that the thoughts and prayers of all members are with those who lost their lives and their loved ones. I'm receiving regular updates, and the Home Office will work closely with Essex Police as we establish exactly what has happened.
This isn't the first time something like this has happened. In 2015, 71 migrants were found dead in a refrigerator truck in Austria near the Hungarian border. They were believed to have run out of oxygen and suffocated in the back of the unventilated vehicle. This latest tragedy serves as a stark reminder of what many migrants are forced to endure on their journey to find safety. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
We move to Ethiopia, where Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has appeared before Parliament to take questions from MPs. He confirmed that the country would be holding the general elections in 2020 and went on to assure MPs that Ethiopia would protect its Nile water rights at all costs. CGTN's Giram Chala has more.
Inside the House of People's Representatives of Ethiopia, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed first talked about the elections coming up in a few months' time. He said, though there are so many reasons to postpone the polls, the election should take place.
Whether it's the current election or the next one, it's unimaginable to think if staging problem-free election in Ethiopia, at least for some time. Democracy is an exercise and culture.
The Prime Minister has also talked about the contentious issue of the Grand Renaissance Dam against Egypt. He said Ethiopia will protect its Nile water rights at all costs.
We said war is not the answer. Neither Egypt nor us will benefit from that. Any sacrifice will be paid for Ethiopia's benefit, but war cannot bring peace.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam will be concluded through three important principles.
First, the dam construction will be completed bearing in mind the sovereignty of Ethiopia. Secondly, we will depreciate empty dreams and propaganda from the truth. We will only follow the scientific rationale and knowledge. Thirdly, the dam will be completed without harming the lower stream countries.
Inside the parliament, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has told parliamentarians that talks between Ethiopia and Egypt on the issue of the dam will be made in a day or two time. We've heard Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed will meet President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in Moscow soon. Group Dala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, in response, Egypt says it is shocked by the Ethiopian Prime Minister's remarks. Tension has been growing lately between the two nations after Cairo announced that talks on the dam had reached a deadlock. CGTN's Adel Al-Marouchi brings us the other side of the story.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's remarks came right before an expected meeting with the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi this week in Russia. Both leaders will be there for the first Russian-African summit. Their meeting was expected to resolve all hanging issues in the dam talks.
Egypt does not want to release any negative statements regarding the issue. It is leading the African Union in the Russian summit, and it wants to preserve the organization's mission of preserving African peace. Egypt is fully committed to the 2015 Declaration of Principles it signed with Ethiopia. Cairo wants to support development in Africa. It will not get engaged in these talks about war.
The Egyptian Foreign Ministry says it was shocked about the Ethiopian Prime Minister's remarks about military options. Cairo considered it a violation to the laws regulating the African Union. Washington, D.C. has sent invitations to the three countries, Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia, calling for a foreign ministers' meeting. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry says it has accepted the invitation, continuing its peaceful efforts to reach an agreement over the dam's operation and water storage. Adel Al-Marouchi, CGTN, Cairo.
In Botswana, voting got underway at 6:30 a.m. in the country's 12th democratic election, and though the day was largely without incident, one polling district cancelled voting after a political party found that it had been omitted from the local government ballot paper. CGTN's Lindim Tangana has more on the day's events.
Make that mark. That's the Electoral Commission's message to voters across Botswana. Young and old, many have heeded that call, lining up since the early hours of this morning to cast their votes. Well before polls opened at 6:30 a.m., queues of eager voters could be seen at many polling stations.
Well, I feel like it's my responsibility as a citizen, especially being a youth citizen, to wake up and come and cast my vote, play my role in choosing where the country is going moving forward and addressing our issues.
At first, people were just reluctant to register. But nowadays, people understand the importance of voting. That's why there's so many people here. They want the right leadership, and voting is a democratic right.
Incumbent President Mokgweetsi Masisi cast his vote at Moselele Primary School in his hometown of Moshopa, 65 kilometers from the capital, Gaborone. While this has been billed as Botswana's toughest election, a confident Masisi praised the strength of both the country's democracy and the ruling party.
It's resilient. The institutions are tested. The resolve and the capacity of the voters is tested. Sure, it's the toughest election we've had to fight, but you know, I enjoy a test. I enjoy a challenge.
Masisi says the BDP will concede defeat if the party is not victorious at the polls.
You know, in the event, as you say, that I do not make it, our parties make it, we will concede. We will retreat into being the opposition with whatever numbers we have. And we will oppose the government as we have opposed the manifesto that they put forward with a lot of vigor and energy.
The Independent Electoral Commission says they are happy with the progress of voting so far. However, voting at one poll in the local government election was cancelled after one of the participating political parties did not find its name on the ballot paper.
They have decided to postpone, to cancel the election and set a new date for that particular local government election.
The country's 2,260 polling stations are expected to close at 7 p.m. local time. Thereafter, vote counting gets underway in Botswana's most contested election. Lindy Mtongana, CGTN, Gaborone, Botswana.
Well, now Lindy joins us. Let's get the latest from Lindy, joining us live from Gaborone. Lindy, thank you so much for joining us. What's the latest from today's elections in Botswana?
Well, Hannah, it has just gone a little after 7 p.m. here in Botswana, and of course, officially polls have closed. But as you can see behind me, there are still a number of people waiting to vote. Now, electoral officers here where we are, Massa Primary School, one of the polling stations, have assured us that those that are still in the queue will be able to cast their votes, but the gates of the school precinct have been closed, which means no new voters can come in. Now, the IEC has acknowledged that in some places voting was slow today. There was unexpected large amount of voter turnout in some precincts at particular times of the day. It was a very hot day, so people came in rather early in the morning, and as you can see now into the evening, waiting times of up to about 3 hours. The full picture, though, of the day's events will be made clearer once we get to the IEC. There will be a press conference this evening that will tell us exactly how voting transpired throughout the country.
Lindsay, looking at the two main parties in this election, the ruling Botswana Democratic Party and the Umbrella for Democratic Change, what would you say are the significant differences on what the two sides are offering?
Well, Hannah, of course, as you know, the Botswana Democratic Party has been in power for 53 years, right down since independence. What they're offering is stability, essentially. But of course, as we know, Botswana being the poster child of stability and economic growth in Africa, it has been very successful under the BDP. But the BDP itself recognizes that the country can't just be dependent on diamonds. So they're promising economic transformation. They're talking about a more inclusive economy, driving foreign direct investment into Botswana, and encouraging private sector growth. The Umbrella for Democratic Change, of course, as it says in the name, is all about change. They're proposing decent lives, decent jobs from a new party. Their promises have been much more dramatic and have had a lot of appeal with younger people, promising 100,000 jobs, new jobs created within a year, within 365 days. They want to double the minimum wage to 3,000 pula, that's about $300, a little less than that, and of course increase the pension as well to about $140. Other promises include free sanitary pads for women in schools. They're talking about improving education, improving health. So these are promises that have had a lot of appeal to a younger generation. As these two parties go head to head, we'll have to see just which way the people of Botswana have been swayed.
Lindy, you had mentioned that there is going to be that press conference where we'll get more information on what's going to happen in the coming days. But from what you've heard so far, what can we expect after today's vote?
Well, indeed, Hannah, that press conference will give us a bit of a lay of the land as far as what's happened today, and especially with some of the later things that are to happen in the evening. Now, Botswana has about 900,000 registered voters, but this is a very vast country. So a lot of the ballot boxes are being transported this evening to counting centers. Some of these are coming from very far-flung places, and this is a process that has to be monitored fairly closely. By 9 o'clock this evening, however, the IEC says this will be the official commencement of the counting of the ballots. By then, at the IEC Results Centre, we'll start seeing those numbers trickling in for both the local government elections and indeed the parliamentary votes as well. By tomorrow morning, we guess a slight picture will start emerging of how those results are looking in those various constituencies. And certainly within 2 days, by Friday, the results of the election will be officially announced, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Lindy. Lindy Mtangana joining us from Gaborone and giving us the latest on the elections there. Well, more news after the break. Here's what you can expect. Russian president tells African leaders there's a lot more room for trade and cooperation. And migrants left stranded as the battle for Tripoli leaves migrant centers in the hands of gangs.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, at Russia's Black Sea resort of Sochi, the first ever Russia-Africa summit kicked off with host President Vladimir Putin meeting various African heads of state. CGTN's Julia Chapman now joins us live from Sochi. Julia, thank you so much for joining us. What's coming out of the first day of these meetings?
Well, we've been hearing a lot from the African leaders as well as Russian President Vladimir Putin, who have all been calling for greater trade and cooperation between Russia and the continent. That was certainly the message when President Putin was delivering his plenary address this morning here at the Black Sea resort of Sochi. And as you say, this is the first time Russia has been hosting this kind of meeting. And we've been seeing it on a really massive scale. 43 African leaders are here in Sochi for this event, showing really the African continent's commitment to Russia as a partner. And that's something that Russia will be very much welcoming as it tries to make itself part of a major player as on the African continent, competing, of course, with the likes of the US and China. So that's something that Russian President Vladimir Putin has really been emphasizing today. He says he wants to see trade double between Russia and the African continent. Right now it stands at around $20 billion US. That's about a doubling from 5 years previously. He says he's likely to see that double again.
Julia, just speak to us about us seeing that China and Japan has had similar ones this year. What informs Russia's timing of this summit?
Well, certainly part of it is a competitive one. They are hoping to position themselves as a competitor, as a major player in Africa. And of course, Russia has relatively limited trade with the continent compared to a number of other major players. But part of the timing, of course, is that Russia has been finding itself slightly isolated in other parts of the world, certainly from Europe and America. And so it's been looking to other avenues for cooperation and for economic cooperation, indeed, especially. And so that's something that it has been looking to Africa for. In particular, it has been looking to sign deals in a number of spheres: agricultural, industrial, as well as military. That's one of the major exports that Russia has to the African continent. Arms deals in between the two regions certainly are significant, and so Russia has been looking to increase that trade. It has also been a big recipient of African produce since the import ban that Russia introduced in order to counteract the sanctions that were imposed on it after the annexation of Crimea.
Julia, so the African leaders have their own agenda for attending this meeting. We know that economic growth is a huge issue for the continent, but from what you're hearing, what are some of the biggest requests we can expect them to table before the Russian president?
Well, a lot of the African leaders who have been here today have been saying that they are looking to Russia as a partner who is offering fewer strings, or indeed no strings, compared to other countries. There are fewer demands, they say, from Russia when it comes to investment in the country. They don't put conditions on their arrangements, on their trade negotiations. They say that they just want economic cooperation between Russia and the African nations. And that's something we've been hearing from the African countries today, from the leaders that have been here in their numbers. We've also been hearing that they want to receive investment in Russian science and technology to help develop the African continent. That's certainly something that they say they want to focus on as well.
Julia, what happens at the end of this? Do we expect a blueprint of future engagements to come? And how soon do you think we can see those happen?
Well, we are expecting some sort of joint document to be signed between all of the leaders that are at the summit in the next couple of days. As for when it will actually materialize or what will become of it, that of course remains to be seen. A lot of the deals between Russia and African nations have been expressed in memoranda of understanding, but then often take many, many years to actually be implemented. So while this is a very significant symbolic event with all of the African leaders visiting the Russian city of Sochi, whether or not it will actually materialize in terms of further investment, as President Putin says he wants it to, we'll see in the years to come.
Thank you so much for joining us, Julia. CGTN's Julia Chapman speaking to us from Sochi in Russia. Well, we move on to the UK, where the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he does not want another Brexit delay, but it was now out of his hands and a decision for the European Union.
I think it would still be very much in the best interest of this country and of democracy to get Brexit done by October the 31st. I will wait to see what our EU friends and partners say in response both to the request for a delay from Parliament and also to the insistence by Parliament that they want a delay.
If the Prime Minister so desperately wants an election, Europe is willing and waiting. What's stopping him? He must now secure a meaningful extension and bring on a general election. Let the Scottish people decide our future in Scotland.
Meanwhile, the opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn criticised the proposed solution to the Irish border, saying there would still be checks between Ireland and Northern Ireland. The debate comes after lawmakers backed Johnson's Brexit deal in principle, but rejected his plan to fast-track the legislation through Parliament in just a few days. Now Britain is asking for 3 more months to sort it all out. However, the EU is demanding that Downing Street provides more details about what it needs the extra time for.
We take note of the votes in the House of Commons last night. President Tusk is now consulting EU 27 leaders on the UK's request to extend Article 50 to the 31st of January 2020. And you will have seen that he tweeted last night. It is therefore first and foremost for the UK to explain next steps. We will continue to follow all events in London this week very closely.
Beijing has denied reports of plans to replace Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam. It's calling such reports, quote, a political rumor. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has warned that ongoing violence in Hong Kong will only hurt the city's prosperity.
There are foreign forces that encourage this kind of violence on the streets in order to destabilize Hong Kong and create chaos in the region. Their aim is to destroy Hong Kong's prosperity, which is the result of the work of several generations. Their aim is also to destroy the region's historic progress since the application of the one country, two systems policy.
We move to Nigeria, where at least 11 people have been rescued from a site in Zaria, Kaduna State. It's believed that the 11 were being held as slaves. The government is currently cracking down on mistreatment at institutions that act as schools or reform centers. CGTN's Philly Haza reports from Abuja.
The victims were found in chains by a task force made up of police, army and the DSS or secret police following a raid on the center known as Malam Aliyu May Adakun Salatu Fatir. Those rescued were described as having undergone inhumane treatment, with some reportedly having been chained up for as long as 8 years. This is the latest in a series of raids on religious centers in Nigeria. Just 48 hours prior to this one, 147 people were rescued from Igabi in the same state. Since the raids began, more than 1,000 men and boys have been discovered in similar centers in parts of Kaduna State and President Buhari's home state of Katsina. Some of them have now been reunited with their families. The centers known as Almajiri schools have been in existence in Nigeria before the colonial era and are supposed to be where young boys go to learn about Islam or as a reform center for people with character issues. President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered a crackdown of such centers across the country. Also, he said the government planned to ban Almajiri schools, but it is unclear when that will happen. The government has appealed to members of the public to stop sending their children to such centers and urged them to be vigilant and report any criminal activities in their communities. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
In Libya, conflict has disrupted the country's migrant detention networks. Many detention centers have been shut down recently, making it easy for migrants to leave ports after being intercepted by the EU-backed Coast Guard. Those still in detention face extreme abuse, including fatal shootings when they try to escape. Here is CGTN's Jen Keo with more details.
These migrants are stranded in the streets of Tripoli. After 3 days at sea trying to get to Europe, Libya's EU-backed Coast Guard intercepted and made them to return to Libya. For years, migrants sent back to Libya have been routinely transferred to government-affiliated detention centers, which are blamed for harsh conditions and abuse. Several detention centers now remain closed due to the ongoing battle over Tripoli. Some of the migrants are being allowed to walk free when they disembark, though they face an uncertain fate.
There are no human rights for migrants in Libya, honestly. We don't have the right to study or work, and the treatment is bad. If there's a way for the Europeans to help us with rescue ships like they did before, we hope they do. We hope the European Union agreement on migration fails, as it has held us back.
According to the United Nations data, about 8,400 migrants have made the crossing to Italy so far this year. The report also states that around 7,400 migrants have been intercepted and have been brought back to Libya. But the ongoing crisis has made Libya even more brutal for those that remain there, as they are exposed to increased levels of abuse and extortion by smugglers, struggling to make money in a shrunken market. The centers have also become targets. In July, more than 50 migrants were killed in an airstrike on a center in Tajura.
When migrants are rescued, they are kept here at detention centers. We urge the Libyan government to open detention centers. We used to have the Tajoura center, which used to receive considerable numbers of migrants. After it was hit by a strike, they closed detention centers. Now we have migrants and no one is there to receive them.
Detention centers, normally under the Tripoli-based internationally recognized government, are controlled by armed groups, which are now involved in the fight against the Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar. Aid workers say that some of the migrants have been enlisted in the war effort. Welfare workers worry that some migrants may be even more vulnerable to underground smugglers if they are not taken to detention centers. Jane Keo, CGTN.
Well, that crackdown is sure to be ongoing, and we'll bring you the latest as it comes. For now, we are going to be handing over to Rama for the latest in your business news.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business. We'll explore why the International Monetary Fund is warning Nigeria about spending money on oil subsidies. And South Africa's ailing power utility Eskom has scored yet another bailout, this time worth $4 billion.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Yet again, the International Monetary Fund is reminding Nigeria's government that it needs to cut spending on fuel subsidies. The latest warning is attributed in part to the drop in global oil prices, but also the very limited domestic tax base. The fund recently forecast growth in sub-Saharan Africa will actually be about 3.2% this year. It might rise to 3.6% in 2020 in its latest economic outlook. According to reports, subsidies and other transfers from the government account for 25% of expenses, and debt service takes up an even larger portion of spending. The fund says that Nigeria needs to phase out implicit fuel subsidies if it is to decisively tackle economic inequality and rebalance public expenditure. On to Africa's other large economy, South Africa. Its state-owned power utility Eskom has secured an additional $4 billion bailout after legislators approved the proposal to give it the cash. This in turn has prompted quite a bit of criticism from opposition parties who describe this latest lifeline essentially as a blank check for a poorly run entity, throwing good money effectively after bad. The special bill was passed to enable Eskom to service its enormous debt load. Eskom has been crippled by repeated faults at its coal power stations and the cost of servicing the over $30 billion of debt that it carries on its books. Now, the company recently unleashed another bout of scheduled power cuts nationwide. A wave of deep power cuts in the first quarter resulted in the largest GDP contraction in South Africa in a decade. The bill for the latest bailout is expected to go to Parliament's second house for approval before then being sent off to the President for his formal assent. Up in North Africa, the UK government has announced that it has lifted a travel warning to Sharm el-Sheikh, the Red Sea resort city in Egypt, effectively allowing flights from the UK to get to that Red Sea resort city. The travel ban had been activated at the end of 2015 after the bombing of a Russian passenger jet after it took off from Sharm el-Sheikh. PSCGTN's Yasser Kim with the latest.
Good news for the tourism sector. The UK market was the third highest exporter of tourists for Egypt before the travel ban on 2015.
In the UK in particular, we were running at closer to 1.6 million travelers per year coming from the UK. And this was representing almost 10% from the total number of tourism coming to Egypt by this time. After the aircraft crashed, this number has dropped down to 230,000.
The travel ban was only on the city of Sharm el-Sheikh. This followed the downing of a Russian passenger jet after takeoff from the city, killing all on board in 2015. Though the blockade did not include other resort cities in Egypt, the impact was still high.
It had a direct effect on the economy, on the foreign direct investments coming to Egypt. Besides as well, the tourists coming to Egypt and the spending habits coming over here, which has decreased the revenues coming to Egypt. So before then, we were representing around 13% from the gross domestic product of Egypt coming from the tourism industry. However, the Egyptian economy have suffered very badly, and we have seen like a one-digit revenues coming from the tourism industry.
Tourism saw a huge improvement since 2017, with an average 40% increase in visitors year on year. 2020 is expected to break the 15 million tourists.
كانت معايير بمواصفات عالمية حطتها الأجهزة الأمنية وده تنفذ.
What was achieved at Sharm el-Sheikh Airport and other airports was an overhaul in security set up according to international standards. This was strictly monitored by security officials from the UK and other European countries before being approved. Now, it's approved, a proof of security and safety of the country.
The prices of trips to Egypt had dropped by half, following the floating of the Egyptian pound in 2016. The UK decision could not have come at a better time, close to Christmas and the New Year, and those are the highest seasons of the year, giving a boost to the tourism industry as we go into 2020. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
On to East Africa now. One of Kenya's public universities has unveiled 6 locally assembled ICT devices that are aimed at essentially institutional users, students, enterprises, government institutions and SMEs in some cases. The devices have been assembled at Moi University's assembly plant in the western highland town of Eldoret in partnership with a Portuguese IT firm. CGTN's Alexandra Majala has the details.
Kenya's Moi University just held an event in the capital, Nairobi, to unveil a range of premium ICT devices. From laptops, desktops and mini PCs, all the devices showcased are assembled at the Moi University Technologies Digital Assembly Plant, based in the campus's Rivertex complex in Eldoret town.
So the new products that you're going to see It's going to be a testimony that more university and with the partnership with JPIK are going to, work on products that appeal, not only in terms of, the functionality, but also the look of it. Slim products, beautiful products, 360 degrees convertible laptops, which is something new in the market.
The devices launched under the name MU marked a broader unveiling of the assembly facility at the university a couple of months ago. The assembly line was set up in collaboration with JPIK, a global organization that serves as a technology enabler in terms of accessing and transferring knowledge. This plant has the capacity to assemble laptops, tablets, desktops, phones, servers, and digital meters for power and water. The gadgets are run by Microsoft's Windows 10 and powered by Intel chips.
Particularly what we do, we buy components from China and bring them here and assemble them locally, which is the major immediate impact of job creation to create. There are other options to bring in SMT lines, so producing motherboards, but this is investment of robotics, so there is not big job creation.
The cheapest laptop will set you back approximately $500. More University and JPIK argue that their devices can compete with products from Dell, HP and Lenovo. JPIK has so far put $5 million into the plant, with plans to double that investment. So far, the facility employs 100 direct employees, all of them university students, with a capacity to employ 1,000 people. It's capable of churning out 4,500 devices a day or 100,000 devices a month. Kenya is a regional leader in ICT in East and Central Africa and is considered one of the top innovation hubs in sub-Saharan Africa. The country is pushing for the ICT sector to drive economic growth. As part of its Big Four agenda, the East African powerhouse is also positioning itself to be a manufacturing hub.
And as government, again, Prof, we commit to ensure that we'll come up with policies and guidelines that will continue to encourage local assembly and local procurement of goods in the policy of Buy Kenya, Build Kenya.
JPIK's model has not been replicated in other universities just yet. So far, the plant at the Moi University has a call center with 12 trained technicians to fix faulty devices. The company plans on training more people to handle after-sales service and deploy them to other universities. Recently, the Kenyan government embarked on a nationwide census. The government implemented the census using mobile technology as per the United Nations recommendation. 67,234 mobile devices, 51,028 power banks, 10,000 solar chargers, and hundreds of tablets were needed for the exercise. And this year, the government sourced all the gadgets used from the university's plant. This factory plans to eventually move away from assembly and concentrate more on manufacturing. Alexandria Majala for CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, Nigeria does generate an estimated 32 million tons of solid waste every year. That's one of the highest levels on the continent. Of that amount, only about 20 to 30% is collected and recycled. The rest finds its way into landfills, sewers, drainage networks, and it does cause some pretty serious environmental damage. For one startup, though, called EcoBarter, that problem represents a business opportunity, especially in the capital city of Abuja. CGTN's Deji Badmus filed this report.
Bottles that we've collected from water companies.
Blessing Ekwere is at the heart of the operations at EcoBarter, a waste collection startup she and a friend set up just last year. Their motivation is for a cleaner capital city, and it's thanks in part to their effort that Abuja is considered among the cleanest cities in Nigeria. Plastics are estimated to make up 2.5 million tons of the waste materials generated in Nigeria annually, and apart from Lagos, the bulk of the plastic waste are generated in Abuja.
Our scavengers usually go into dumps, households, and get all this around. And then we pile them up here until it's about, say, 2 to 3 tons before we move them to the companies that break them down for recycling.
Every day, scavengers contracted by EcoBarter go around the city, collecting waste, which are then brought to this facility for weigh-in and sorting.
We do door-to-door collections and make sure that even your food waste, the food waste still ends up in a controlled dump sites. We also do buy-offs from big scavengers. We enter dumps and do buy-offs from them, collect their waste in bulk, and then transport it to the company for them for recycling. So far, since inception, we've been able to divert 100,000 kilograms of waste from landfills.
Through the EcoBata initiative, the scavengers now have a means of livelihood, and about 100 of them now work for EcoBata. At the end of every day's supply, the scavengers and Blessing hold a meeting where each scavenger's supply is calculated and entered into the farm's record for payment.
Part of the reasons we do this is to be able to earn a living to take care of ourselves and our families. But some of us are orphans. Nonetheless, they can be of assistance to their siblings or friends. In fact, what I earn from this trade in 2 weeks, even a top-ranking civil servant can't earn in a month.
For Aquaria and her colleague at EcoBata, the vision is to create an active and sustainable system that ensures environmental safety one community at a time. And despite the daunting challenge, they are forging ahead.
We need more finance to be able to run this at a larger scale. That's what we want. And then another challenge we have is the mindset, because we are not just about having guys go around to pick waste. We want people to see the importance of sorting their waste, and then so already we in Nigeria, we already have a mindset that it's waste. As long as it has been thrown away, it's away. So we want people to see that they could capture value for their waste, and then indiscriminate dumping is a problem to them.
As the zero waste movement continues to spread across the globe, stakeholders and waste management companies like this are keen on intensifying campaigns to enlighten the general public on the need for proper disposal of solid waste. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be looking at the Russia-Africa summit. Russia believes it can essentially double bilateral trade with economies here on the continent. But exactly how is that going to happen? We'll have the details of that and plenty more live at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Hannah.
Thank you so much, Rama. Well, whether you like chess or not, this is going to be quite a fascinating story. We're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll bring you the story of a whiz kid who is making headlines in South Africa. Here's some details. Well, meet the 7-year-old chess wizard who has broken South Africa's record by winning 33 consecutive tournament matches.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, we begin in Ethiopia, where the 9th Listeners' Choice Awards have been held in the capital, Addis Ababa. The event occurs annually and is one of the most respected functions of its kind due to its positive impact on the entertainment industry in that country. Let's take a look at more.
9 years in a row and yet growing each time. Lazza Listeners' Choice Award came back with more categories, more glamour and pomp. Best Actor, Actress, Best New Artist, Best Album of the Year, Movie of the Year, as well as Lifetime Achievement Award included. There are 12 categories. For the artists, this was all special.
I mean, I feel incredible.
I'm very happy. I was already like in a great excitement because I was going to perform in front of a lot of artists, incredible artists in Ethiopia. I mean, it means a lot.
This is fantastic. You know, it is always good to appreciate the artist's effort. This is a country of young people and they are working hard to take the Ethiopian film and music industry forward. And they must be respected for that. This is a country with great hope.
This has a significant contribution for us. It will encourage us to be more creative and come up with better works of art all the time. Its uniqueness is also its inclusive approach of bringing everyone together.
The organizer of Lizza Listener's Choice Award, Berhanu Degafe, who is also one of the well-reputed radio entertainers and on Okta, says the award is showcasing improvements every year.
We do selections based on listeners' choice, viewers' choice, as well as the judges. And we also synergize all of them to select the best work of art. And every year we improve our work and performance.
Award events like the Lizza Listener's Choice Award keep providing the necessary and vital support for the growth of the Ethiopian music, film and generally entertainment industry. These kinds of events also excite the taste buds of almost all participants. Grumtara CGTN at the Lizza Awards, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Paul Bowers, a 7-year-old chess prodigy from Johannesburg, has recently broken a long-standing South African record, having won 33 consecutive tournament matches. CGTN's Julie Shire met up with the young chess champion and filed this report.
Paul Bowers may be only 7 years old, but he's already a chess champion and the country's highest-rated under-8 player.
I love chess because it helps my brain to think. Chess is my superpower. Well, I won 33 consecutive games. I'm happy that I inspire other children. I'm actually hope to achieve my dream of going to other countries, other continents, and that's what I want from chess.
Impressed by his skills, former South African chess champion Clyde Volpe started coaching Bowers.
He works hard, but he gets the rewards, and he's #1 in the country for his age, and he just keeps progressing. You know, he's going to the Africa Youth Championships, and he's just knocking down every record that comes in his way. Umpo is absolutely like a legend, and he's got so much willpower as well. I'm very privileged to be his coach. But I have to say that he himself and his dad have done so much groundwork. His dad, Justin, is a player himself, and he's brought him up to a great level as well. And he's got incredible discipline, loves the game, and it's just getting better and better.
Introduced to the game at a young age by his father, Empo started playing chess when he was only 3.
We've always had a chess board in the house. By the age of 3, I thought I'd start teaching him just the names of the pieces and how to set up the board. Shortly after his 3rd birthday, unfortunately, his mother passed away, and so it was a very difficult period of time for both of us. Just after he was about 5.5, he saw the chessboard again and he said, "Papa, can you teach me now properly how to play?"
Empo is now the reigning under-8 South African champion.
We won 33 consecutive games. The previous record was 26, so that was a phenomenal achievement. Obviously, Empo is the #1 ranked under-8 chess player in South Africa. In terms of his rating, which chess players use to gauge your strength, he's in the top 10 of the under-10 players. So I would say he's probably one of the most promising under-8 chess players that we've had, certainly one of the most dominating that we've ever had in South Africa.
But when he's not competing, Empo spends his time like any other child.
I do karate, I like martial arts. Chess is right now my goal. I like a lot of things, actually. I like airplanes. I like a lot of things.
While Empo loves chess, he dreams of becoming a pilot when he grows up. The young champion has such a bright future ahead that we can't wait to see what he gets up to next. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, your sports news is coming up after the break. Here's what you can expect. Egypt International Badminton Championship attracts 126 badminton players from 31 countries.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, we serve up with some racket sports news where 126 badminton players from 31 countries are competing in the Egypt International Badminton Championship. It's the 5th time Cairo is hosting the event with a $10,000 prize kitty. The championship is also an Olympics qualifier where players will earn points towards reaching the Tokyo 2020 Games.
This is the second champion for me, because last year I was champion also in here, and I feel it's very happy, very enjoy, and yeah, it's very good for me also. For this year, I think it's more stronger because this year is like Olympic year, like many players come to the tournament, like from Europe, from Asia. It's very, very tough.
This is the 5th time Egypt has hosted this competition. Every year, it's been getting stronger and developing quite well. This year, because of the Olympics, it was the toughest competition. We in the Egyptian team did very well. We were concerned with the Indian team. They are the best. We did quite well in our matches against them. We've won 3 bronze medals, and I think that's quite good given the magnitude of the competition.
I tried my best on my final, but then the second match, my opponent retired because of her health bad conditions. Yeah, so I feel sorry for that also. The whole tournament, I tried my best for like every round. I came here for last year or so. Last year I also get a champion here, so I think my ranking will be like a little bit more up here. I'm preparing for the Olympics, so I will try to go for a lot of tournaments near here.
The tennis news now. 98 young tennis players from 15 countries are participating